Have you ever wondered about women who live alone? No partner, no boyfriend, not even appearing like they're searching for one. The answer isn't found in loneliness, lack of options, or heartbreak. It lies in something more profound, more unsettling, something that challenges everything society has taught us about a woman's role. When a woman chooses solitude, she isn't getting lost, she's finding herself. And this kind of self-discovery doesn't arrive with applause or company. It comes with silence, strength, and a freedom that many still struggle to comprehend. No, she's not lonely. She's selective. She's not cold. She's simply tired of burning for people who never wanted to feel her warmth. There's something deeply threatening about a woman who doesn't require a relationship to feel whole, because it shatters the logic of control, dismantles the myth of emotional dependency, and reveals an uncomfortable truth. Most men don't know what to do with a woman who doesn't need saving, and most women are still learning to recognize their own power in that reflection. Carl Jung once noted that everything we deny in ourselves becomes part of our shadow. These independent women are reflections of the collective shadow. They embody what many dream of becoming, but few have the courage to embrace. They don't scream for love, they whisper their choices. They don't display themselves for attention, they retreat to preserve their essence. They're less interested in charming princes and more focused on cultivating their own peace. This makes people uncomfortable because while society demands the urgency of partnership, these women have discovered the power of being with themselves. The woman living alone isn't lost. She's operating on a different level, where nothing is begged for, but everything is chosen. Where external approval isn't needed because presence is enough. Perhaps that's why she sparks so much criticism and judgment, so many attempts to label or explain her. What many fail to understand is that behind her apparent absence is a presence that fills, transcends, and challenges our emotional status quo. She doesn't want just any love. She wants something that doesn't diminish her. And until that arrives, she stands strong, whole, complete. Maybe you don't understand it now. Maybe you think it's exaggeration, pride, or emotional damage in disguise. But deep within, a quiet question pulses, even when you try to ignore it. What if this silent path is actually the only one that leads to the most important kind of love, the love that begins with yourself? The silence surrounding a woman who lives alone isn't emptiness, it's a sanctuary. Those who don't understand often call her distant, cold, or arrogant. But what few see is that she didn't build this fortress to shut the world out. She built it to not lose herself within it. Jung also said that everything we don't confront in ourselves, we end up projecting onto others. Perhaps that's why so many women confuse solitude with absence, when actually it can be fertile ground for profound self-discovery. While most seek to fill themselves through external connections, this woman has turned her gaze inward. There, in the vastness of her own consciousness, she faced the ghosts she avoided for years. Childhood wounds, unspoken abandonments, attachments disguised as love. If this message resonates with your soul, take a moment now to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you experienced this journey towards self-discovery? Your story matters, and others might find strength in your words. Now, let's continue exploring this path of feminine awakening. Her decision to be alone didn't emerge from an open wound, but from a scar that finally healed. She didn't stop believing in love. She just stopped accepting what others called love when it only made her feel smaller. This woman knows chaos. She's loved until she lost herself. She's given too much, begged for crumbs that should never have been offered. But at some point, she awakened. Not suddenly, but through a series of disappointments that stopped hurting and started teaching. What you see isn't coldness, it's emotional maturity. And maturity is intimidating because it demands presence, depth, and truth. She doesn't want just any company. She wants reciprocity. She's no longer drawn to promises, but to genuine presence. Perhaps that's why she sparks so much criticism and judgment, so many attempts to label or explain her. What many fail to understand is that behind her apparent absence is a presence that fills, transcends, and challenges our emotional status quo. She doesn't want just any love. She wants something that doesn't diminish her. And until that arrives, she stands strong, whole, complete. Maybe you don't understand it now. Maybe you think it's exaggeration, pride, or emotional damage in disguise. But deep within, a quiet question pulses, even when you try to ignore it. What if this silent path is actually the only one that leads to the most important kind of love, the love that begins with yourself? The silence surrounding a woman who lives alone isn't emptiness, it's a sanctuary. Those who don't understand often call her distant, cold, or arrogant. But what few see is that she didn't build this fortress to shut the world out. She built it to not lose herself within it. Jung also said that everything we don't confront in ourselves, we end up projecting onto others. Perhaps that's why so many women confuse solitude with absence, when actually it can be fertile ground for profound self-discovery. While most seek to fill themselves through external connections, this woman has turned her gaze inward. There, in the vastness of her own consciousness, she faced the ghosts she avoided for years: childhood wounds, unspoken abandonments, attachments disguised as love. If this message resonates with your soul, take a moment now to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you experienced this journey towards self-discovery? Your story matters, and others might find strength in your words. Now, let's continue exploring this path of feminine awakening. Her decision to be alone didn't emerge from an open wound, but from a scar that finally healed. She didn't stop believing in love. She just stopped accepting what others called love, when it only made her feel smaller. This woman knows chaos. She's loved until she lost herself. She's given too much, begged for crumbs that should never have been offered. But at some point, she awakened. Not suddenly, but through a series of disappointments that stopped hurting and started teaching. What you see isn't coldness, it's emotional maturity. And maturity is intimidating because it demands presence, depth, and truth. She doesn't want just any company. She wants reciprocity. She's no longer drawn to promises, but to genuine presence. Perhaps that's why she seems unreachable to many, because she doesn't want to be saved. She wants to be seen. And that requires more than charm or sweet words. It takes courage to dive into depths where few dare to go. That's where many retreat, not because she's difficult, but because she's whole. When a woman becomes whole, she awakens two extremes in the world: admiration and fear. Admiration from those seeking similar wholeness. Fear from those living in halves, waiting for someone else to complete them. She doesn't want to complete anyone. She wants to overflow alongside someone who has also found themselves. Until then, she remains alone, not by fate's whim, but out of loyalty to her own soul. This woman isn't hiding. She's protecting herself. There's a profound difference between isolation and self-preservation. But society doesn't easily accept a woman like this. A world that still preaches happily ever after only exists in pairs. A world that distrusts those without partners as if that were failure. Jung once said that where convention rules, there's little room for authenticity. This woman doesn't live by convention, she lives by essence. She hears phrases like, "You're too picky," or "Nobody's perfect." And she smiles a calm, steady, almost knowing smile. Because what many call picky is simply the bare minimum. The minimum it took her decades to realize she deserves. She's not seeking perfection. She's looking for someone mature enough to love without destroying. Someone who's done the inner work she has already faced. And let's be honest, that's not something you find on every corner. The discomfort she causes isn't in what she says, it's in what she represents. She's living proof that happiness without dependency is possible, and that tears masks off men who feed on female insecurity and makes women, still trapped in approval-seeking, feel judged. But she isn't here to confront anyone. She's just being. And the authenticity of someone who has freed herself is itself a powerful mirror to those still living in chains. This woman isn't rushed. She doesn't need to accelerate to please anyone. She honors her own pace, stirring silent fury in a society that wants everything immediately. She wants depth while the world chases distraction. She wants presence while the world offers shallow availability. She longs for soul-level bonds while everyone else tries to appear interesting on social media. When she says no, it's not a game, it's truth. When she walks away, it's not drama, it's self-defense. When she chooses home instead of going out with someone empty, it's not arrogance, it's clarity. And that clarity, earned through pain and surrender, is her greatest revolution. She doesn't live to please, she lives to be. And that simple act of being is what makes her so transformative. Perhaps what unsettles people most about this woman isn't her solitude. It's the peace she's found within herself. Jung taught that those who look outward dream, but those who look inward awaken. And it was precisely that inner journey that she undertook. It wasn't easy. It was a grueling process of removing masks, confronting the ghosts of emotional dependency, and rebuilding herself piece by piece. She no longer defines herself through others' eyes. She sees herself through her own. And that changes everything. How many times have you wondered if being alone is failure or freedom? How many times have you felt the need to justify yourself for not having someone by your side? This woman felt that too. She once thought something was wrong with her for being alone in a world that idolizes couples, even unhappy ones. But eventually, she understood it's better to be alone than invisible in a relationship. That day, she made a pact with herself. Never again would she accept less than she truly deserves. Her path isn't linear. There are days of doubt, moments of nostalgia, nights of deep silence. But there's also strength that grows with each conscious decision. She learned that true love doesn't cage, consume, or manipulate. The love she wants liberates, adds, supports, without suffocating. Until that love arrives, she continues growing independently, not from pride, but integrity. This woman embodies Jung's concept of individuation. She's faced her shadow, descended into the unconscious, and returned more whole than before. Now that she recognizes herself, she refuses to be half of anything again. She doesn't want someone to complete her. She wants someone to share that awareness with. That's intimidating because it demands emotional responsibility. And sadly, few love responsibly. Most love out of lack, possession, or fear. If she walks alone today, it's because every step echoes with learning. Every no is an act of self-respect. Every absence a reminder that love should never be begged for. She no longer needs to prove anything, and that certainty transforms everything around her. A woman who has rediscovered herself becomes powerful not because of her weapons, but because of her clarity. The woman living alone without a partner isn't the same woman who once begged to be loved. Something within her transformed, and that transformation set her free. Sometimes, only in breaking do we find our true form. Jung said that the tree that grows towards heaven must have roots that reach towards hell. That's exactly what she experienced. She descended into her own story, faced ancestral fears, inherited pain, traumas belonging not just to her, but to women before her. She broke cycles, refused relationships repeating toxic patterns, and learned it wasn't her job to heal anyone or accept crumbs out of fear of solitude. When she stopped accepting less, the world tried to convince her she was wrong, but she held her ground, first with uncertainty, then awareness, finally with unshakable conviction. Because someone who has lived in their own abyss no longer fears absence. She learns to nourish herself with silence, warm herself with her own presence. She's not unreachable. She simply no longer allows invasion. There's a world of difference between opening your heart and allowing yourself to be torn apart. Her transformation isn't superficial, it's archetypal, as if she's accessed ancient wisdom, an old memory that women weren't born to serve but to express, not to be shaped, but to overflow. In accessing that memory, something awakened. A wild woman, intuitive, emotionally sovereign. A woman who, though alone, is far from lost. She's in communion with something greater, her own destiny. No matter how they try to reduce her with labels, cold, difficult, distant, nothing adheres because she no longer lives to fit in. She lives to expand. She no longer fights for attention. She radiates presence. She's no longer waiting to be chosen. She does the choosing. That reversal confuses those who still try to control the feminine, but she's already crossed the threshold. On the other side, she discovered the real relationship begins only after you've loved yourself enough to not need anyone. There's something sacred about how she moves through the world. She doesn't need applause or validation. Her confidence is quiet, and in that silence lives her true strength. Jung said that everything we face within eventually becomes our destiny. Perhaps that's why this woman, in choosing herself repeatedly, has authored a destiny few understand, but many secretly envy. She no longer tries to fill voids with promises or convince anyone she deserves love. She doesn't beg for space in anyone's life because she's learned that presence should never be begged for. It should be invited. When the invitation lacks truth, she simply declines, not with anger or bitterness, but with the dignity of someone who's been lost too many times to repeat the same wound. This message is for everyone who has felt misunderstood in their independence. If these words have touched something deep within you, please take a moment to like and share this video with other souls who might need this reminder. Your comment below could be the light someone else needs today. Subscribe to continue this journey of authentic self-discovery together. When something resonates with your soul, let it keep flowing through you towards others who are ready to hear it. What few understand is that this woman still longs for love. She still wants to be held, touched, chosen, but without losing herself. She spent too long trying to fit into molds too small for her soul. Now she offers herself only where there's room to be whole, requiring a maturity beyond romance, awareness, shadow work, and still choosing to love. She's not looking for fairy tales. She's seeking a soul alliance where neither dominates nor submits, where both grow together without dimming their colors, silencing their pain, or shrinking their dreams. If that seems too much for some, so be it. She'd rather wait than survive on emotional crumbs. To many, this sounds like arrogance, but it's simply self-love in its purest form. We're witnessing a new archetype, a woman who has walked away from the superficial to dive into depths, who tired of being merely desired and chose to be respected, who chose solitude, not because she abandoned love, but because she began to understand that real love never demands self-denial. When a woman understands this, her entire world transforms. She doesn't need to raise her voice. Her presence speaks before words. Wherever she goes, energy shifts, as if something realigns, subtly but unmistakably. This isn't mysticism, it's energy. It's the weight of someone who has faced brutal inner wars and returned in peace. Not because she conquered all fears, but because she learned to live with them without being defeated. Jung would say she found wholeness not by eliminating opposites, but by integrating them. She doesn't reject love. She's learned not to submit to unbalanced relationships where one dims so another shines. She longs to love where her essence needn't be edited, where she can be both shadow and light, laughter and tears, silence and storm. She realized those who only love the pleasant parts haven't learned what love truly is, and those demanding constant sweetness don't understand the necessary beauty of bitterness for growth. She's too whole to settle for halves, too free to accept prisons disguised as care, too sensitive for shallow bonds, yet strong enough to choose this path even when painful, lonely, or misunderstood. That is the journey of an awakened soul, sacrificing instant validation for deeper truth. The world fears women like her, women who don't need, don't bow, refuse to be molded, because they challenge invisible structures, question old patterns, and break silent emotional contracts. Declaring a woman's worth comes only through partnership. When she rewrites her narrative, she inspires others, dangerously revolutionary to systems of control. So she continues, sometimes tearful, sometimes proud, always grounded, because she knows she's not alone. She's with herself. After everything, that's more than enough. The love that follows won't be salvation. It will be celebration. It won't fill her. It will overflow. When a woman chooses to walk alone, the world rushes to convince her she's mistaken. But deep within, she feels alignment, not pride or rebellion, but rare wisdom born in silence. The wisdom Jung called individuation, becoming fully yourself without masks or compromise. When that happens, nothing outside has more power than the truth pulsing within. That truth doesn't need to shout. It shows in how she quietly closes doors without resentment, withdraws from depleting environments, smiles peacefully even alone. She discovered solitude isn't punishment, but loyalty to her own soul. And the soul of an awakened woman doesn't submit, dim, or beg. It simply is. And that is enough. The world will keep offering distractions, plastic princes, love made for display. But she's seen behind the curtain and understood it's not about finding someone. It's about never losing yourself again. When that realization blooms, everything changes. Desire becomes discernment. Lack becomes choice. Waiting becomes a path. What once hurt now teaches. What once bound now liberates. You can feel it within, that stirring, that spark. Maybe it's memory, an old wound, nostalgia never understood. Maybe it's the image of a woman you once knew, or the woman you've become. Either way, something within asks to be seen more clearly. Something that no longer fits old molds. Something that could transform how you relate to love, to others, and most importantly, to yourself. That woman living alone is more than someone outside the norm. She's a living symbol of emotional freedom, proving it's possible to rebuild without hurry, fear, or needing to prove anything. She doesn't lead or follow. She carves her unique path, lighting fires for others awakening too. If something inside you resonated with this story, perhaps deep down, you're ready for a new kind of love, beginning with reconciliation with yourself, feeding on silence, presence, and truth, a love that can't be negotiated, begged for, or disguised. If that love hasn't arrived, perhaps you first needed to become the woman who no longer accepts less than she deserves. And if this message found you at the perfect moment or awakened someone forgotten within, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with others who need to remember their strength.